and a very warm welcome to another episode of the Liz Earle Wellbeing Show. Now, I have just had the real pleasure of being joined here in my studios by my old friend, Andrea McLean. She is an award-winning TV broadcaster, journalist and radio presenter who has glittered on our TV screens as a host of Loose Women for over a decade. She was last here actually on the Liz Earle Wellbeing Show at the end of 2018 when we had a chat about her fantastic tell-all book, Confessions of a Menopausal Woman. And today we are talking about her latest release, This Girl is on Fire, which she hopes will, quote, empower women to live, learn and thrive in a life they love. Now, we have just had a fascinating chat about her gruelling experience, oh my goodness, with the SAS on our television screens. She endured kidnapping, interrogation, and even jumped out of a helicopter backwards into freezing water. And this extreme experience actually triggered a catastrophic breakdown on her return home. Well, she shares really openly how she put the pieces back together, how she emerged stronger and learnt more about herself along the way. And don't forget, if you would like to watch our chat, you can now find the full video podcasts over on the Liz Earle Wellbeing YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. Andrea, it's so lovely to have you back here.
So nice to be back.
Oh, although we are distant.
I know, we're being safe.
We are being a bit distant.
We're being good.
But I remember talking to you before and we had such great chats about menopause and life and times and your career and all of that. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of maybe got out of the loop a bit and I was really shocked, I have to say, when I read your amazing book, This Girl is on Fire, which is just about to come out. The honesty of it and what you talk about in terms of your, catastrophic breakdown, essentially, after filming with the SAS, which was obviously super extreme. I remember seeing your pictures actually on social media on Instagram and thinking, wow, I don't know how she did it. And of course you did do it, but at an amazing cost. What happened?
It's so interesting. I think, first of all, people sort of think, you had a breakdown, but you're so smiley and you're so
positive.
I missed a couple of weeks of work. I took some time off work, literally a few weeks, and so people would think, yeah, but you didn't really, did you? How could you manage to function? And what I would say to that is, just because someone is smiling and staying professional and turning up every day and still knocking it out the park, it doesn't mean there's not a whole lot of stuff going on behind the eyes. And so that's the sort of first thing. Going back to the SAS, why did I do that in the first place? I did it because I was 49 and I knew I'd be the oldest person to take part in it. If anyone's ever watched it, basically it's people in their 20s and 30s who are really fit. Most of them are like personal trainers, or at least they go to the gym a lot and this sort of thing. And I knew I would be nowhere near as strong as them. But I thought, I'm probably going to be one of the oldest. What I didn't realize was at the time, I was the oldest person ever to take part. And I was also the oldest woman to ever take part. But what I said to myself was, I'm not competing with them. I'm just going to have my own experience.
Yes.
So that released a whole lot of, there's no point competing with someone who's clearly going to beat you physically. But mentally, I was curious to see how far I could go. Because I'm quite a robust person. And I do have a kind of, pull your socks up and get on with it kind of attitude.
Yeah.
But how far can I go when someone else is calling the shots? And what I found was not that far.
So where did they take you and what did you start doing?
Okay, so basically I turned it down 3 times. And so the time was getting shorter and shorter between, saying yes and then leaving. So really it was about 10 days when I finally said yes. Then they didn't tell us where we were going. We turned up at the airport and they said, look, we're going to take all your stuff off you anyway and give you any clothing that you need. So just turn up at the airport. But by logic and looking at the last show, I thought, I bet they're going to take us somewhere cold. And it was the Andes Mountains in Chile, which meant that we were dealing with altitude. We were also dealing with, to the bones cold. Funny enough, the series after that was in Scotland. I swear Scotland's probably colder than the Andes in Chile. I know this, and that's proper to the bone cold. So they flew us there. We had a few days to sort of bed in with altitude sickness and this sort of stuff. But then you're on edge the whole time because you know you're going to be kidnapped.
Oh,
which
my
sounds
goodness. That
it's
would be my
ridiculous,
worst
isn't it?
nightmare.
It's ridiculous. And we're all constantly sort of like this.
So is that what happens? They kidnap you and then you have to what, escape or be rescued? How does it work?
No, I mean, when it actually happened, we all felt a bit sheepish because we'd totally forgotten that if they're going to do it, they have to put microphones on you. So clearly, it wasn't just going to, they're not suddenly going to just, do the same. So we were taken to this abandoned motel that looked like something out of a cheesy horror movie. And basically it was lots of chalet bungalows around this lake, but no one was staying there. And so there were hardly any lights on. And they put us in these individual bungalows and just said, right, we will come and get you in the morning. And then, but they don't tell you when. And I just thought, it's going to be tonight. I bet it's tonight. So I went round. Funny enough, this is old GMTV reporter days. You'd have to stay in some pretty shocking places. So
have been there.
Yeah, I was quite used to, right, you put your bags down, you check every window. And sure enough, there was a few that were unlocked. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if they've left them unlocked so they can break in. So I locked every window. I got myself into a little a room, wedged a chair under the door, checked all my windows there and slept in my clothes, ready in case. But I think, again, because of old breakfast television reporting days, once I knew I was safe, I actually had not a bad night's sleep. It was
Did
cold,
you have your HRT with you? Were you allowed
yes,
to take
they
that?
let me take my HRT.
Oh, good. I was going to say, otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't have slept if I hadn't had that.
Well, I'd have been warm. I'd have been warm. But also, I'd have been raging. Maybe it would have been a good idea not to have it. But it didn't actually happen then. They woke us up the next day, gave us some breakfast, drove us out to the middle of nowhere. And then they said, right, get out. And then we saw the crew. And then we realised. And then you feel really stupid because you've wasted 3 nights' sleep.
Yeah, worrying about
it. And then this is all sort of documented in the book. But what then happened was we have a black cotton bag pulled over our head. And you're told to get into the bottom of like one of these long, thin boats that you see in sort of South America and Thailand and this sort of thing with an outboard motor. We sat on the floor and we were told to just keep still. And then we heard another boat come and we could feel it move a bit. And you could sense that, okay, right, the SAS guys are on the boat. And then it took off, but you don't really know what's happening. So again, my telly brain was clicking in. I thought, I bet they're filming the opening sequence now. So I was quite relaxed. And I could hear a drone. I thought, okay, they're filming. Yes, okay. They're probably standing on the front. Okay, I'm quite chilled. Nothing's going to happen. And so I was telling myself, when it happens, I'm going to be all right because I'm in a TV show. I've been doing this for hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's just telly.
That didn't happen at all. Literally, as soon as the boat kind of went and sort of ground, you could feel it hitting sort of sand. And then next thing, you were hauled really roughly to your feet. You're told, you're sworn at a lot and told, right, jump. And you don't know how far you're jumping because you've got a bag on your head. Kneel down. So I knelt down and then walk round the side of the lake. By now, my heart was pounding so hard. I could hardly hear what he's saying. And I'm trying to tell myself, it's just telly. It's just telly. It's just telly. And we went around the corner. He whipped the bag off my head. This lovely, I say now, this lovely SMS man called Billy, who actually is wonderful. But at that moment, he literally looked at me like he could see into my soul and he hated everything he saw.
Right.
And at that moment, everything I'd held in for years and years and years and years flew out. It was literally like a box that I had put all my past experiences, all the things that had happened to me. I'd put it in a box. I thought buried it in a garden, put a tree on it, and don't look at it anymore. You don't realize actually that it's still there. Yeah, it is. And it was literally at that moment that the bad came up, and it was to do with the look in his eyes. He literally looked at me like he hated everything he saw. I reacted. I reacted physically. I reacted mentally. I was taken back in time. I choked, but it was all happening so fast. And then he just shouted at us all to turn around, and we turned around, and a helicopter flew overhead, and we were, like I say, we were at the side of a lake. And Ant Middleton climbed out. Now, people know Ant Middleton. He's the sort of lead SAS guy. He's black hair, beard, blue eyes. And he climbed out, stood onto the feet thing of the helicopter, went like this and fell backwards into the lake. And all I could think of was,
what?
Oh my God, they're going to make us do that. And within seconds, they were screaming at us to get into the water, fully submerged, come back out again. And that we found out later that the reason they did that was because if we'd have gone up dry and fallen straight in the water, the shock of hitting the cold, you could have passed out. It would have been a much more traumatic experience. So we sort of went in one by one, had to run up this hill, get in the helicopter. And again, it's all detailed in the book. I couldn't hear what he was saying. I was so scared. All I
shock was
hear
just
was my heart, my breath, see this angry man shouting, and then I was useless.
This sounds absolutely terrifying. And then did you have to jump out the helicopter?
I did, yeah. We I jumped in. He was shouted something about what I was supposed to do, and do you understand? I just went, I have no idea what you said. And literally before my bum had even hit the seat, it took off, like in the movies, just sort of took off. And all I could think of was, I'm going to fall out before I've even done anything. And we got to above the lake. Oh my goodness, it must have been 30 meters, 100 feet. It was like 3 stories high. It was very, very high. And he just yelled, get out, put your feet on the
little bars
on the bottom of the helicopter. Now, that's hard enough when it's on the ground, but it's in the air. So it's kind of going like this. It's sort of buffeting about.
And you're not strapped on, presumably.
You've got nothing. So it's literally like this. My fingernails were hanging onto the seat. There was nothing apart from him holding onto my sweatshirt. He may have been strapped. I don't know. I can't remember now. And then I got out, let go. He's holding onto me here. And he said, do you understand? Keep tight. Keep tight. So I let go, as in keep my body totally rigid. Don't go floppy when I fall out. Oh. And then he went, poof.
And he pushed
and
you
I
out.
literally fell backwards out of a helicopter and landed on my head in this freezing cold water in Chile.
God. This is outrageous.
But it all happened so fast. And I think what's interesting is I think what made me good at it, I did the best backwards dive, I'll have you know. Mine was even better than Ant's. Billy told me afterwards. I think it's because instinctively, and you'll understand this, I'm a very good girl.
You do as you're told.
Instantly do as I'm told. I don't question. I don't go, oh, that doesn't make any sense. And what the hell do you mean fall backwards? I just go,
I'm going
okay,
home now.
I don't like this. I just did exactly what I was told.
And how long did you stay in for?
Not that long. I was only in for a couple of days.
Yeah, but even so.
Well, each minute feels like an hour because you don't know when you're going to hold, you're woken up in the middle of the night you get beasted, which is basically...
Or do they cover you in beasts?
That would have been better because, again, it would have been warmer. You have to run outside and they get you like in this little courtyard thing. And then you have to do press-ups, push-ups, crawling on the ground. It was sleeting. It was stony. Your hands are being cut. Your arms are being cut, and the whole time they're screaming at you, and you have to hold a rock above your head until someone gives up, and all this sort of thing.
So, at what point did you say this is enough is enough, or were you asked to leave? How does it work?
Well, for me, what was interesting was there was a few moments where they ask us to do certain things, and clearly you're being observed. And I was one of the first people that was called in to have. If you can imagine, it's like this, but not as friendly and nice. So it's like
an interrogation.
Room. Yeah. It's but I was here, and there was 2 of them sort of sat there.
Did they have a spotlight on you? Is it that
pretty
sort of
much?
Classic
Yeah,
movie scene.
Yeah. It's very dark. You get led in with a bag over your head, and you don't really know where you are. So they'd called me in, and it was Ant and Ollie, and again, I can't stress enough. The guys are wonderful. You don't think so at the time, but actually I realised, funny enough, in this moment, in this room, they called me in, and Ant said to me, "You are fragile." And I didn't know it at that time, but they decided they wanted to just break me and see, right, what's causing all this? Why is she so fragile? And the point of it is not just to break you to be mean and leave you lying on the floor. It's actually, once you're broken, you can be put back together again. Of course, you don't know that until afterwards.
Okay.
So I was in there for quite a long time, probably 45 minutes or so, where they pushed and pushed and pushed, and they wanted to know what happened. We saw something happen to you. What were you thinking of? Why are you reacting in this way? And I wouldn't tell them. So they pushed and pushed and pushed. And in the end, I said, this isn't for broadcast because this is intensely personal.
Yes.
But I told them. And after that, the whole atmosphere in the room changed. And it went from 2 very intimidating men and 1 quite small woman to actually, they explained to me that what they're doing is they're trying to see what I'm made of.
Right.
And every time they shout at me, don't feel fear, don't have flashbacks, don't go back to that time, get angry and use all the anger that I was too afraid to show before. And they said, we want to see you look like you want to punch our lights out, because we'll be really happy with that, because then we'll know that you're getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
So every time we shout at you, feel rage and use it and let it out.
It sounds like the most intense therapy session
It completely
ever.
was. Yeah, I mean, it was horrific, but it was. So funnily enough, when I got beasted sort of later, there was a bit when Ant was screaming at me, really screaming at me. And I'm quite a gentle soul. I don't show rage very much. I was like, oh, crawling through the stuff. And I could see the look in his eye that he was pleased. And again, I am a people pleaser. I'm thinking, oh, he's really proud of me because I'm getting really angry. So after that, you know, the next few days we had various things to do. I wanted to make them proud of me, which is a weird Stockholm syndrome kind of reaction to, you know, but I wanted to do the absolute best I could. So you asked how I ended up leaving. One of the things we had to do was we were driven for hours and got to this cliff face up in the mountains, and we had to rock climb up and then abseil face first down. Now, I actually quite like rock climbing and I quite like abseiling, but not face first. Face first is hideous. Yeah. And by then we had already done this thing in the morning where we'd ended up in a river. I mean, it was glacial meltwater. That's how cold it was. We'd got changed, but you know, this is do you have showers? Do you have bathrooms? No, there was an outside tap, and that's where you have to rinse your muddy boots off and this sort of thing. So our clothes were damp, we were damp, it was very cold. And I got up fine, and I blocked everybody out and just thought, it's just something I've got to do, and I just did it. And I pulled myself up, got to the top. But by the time we got to the top, I was starting to shake so much. I mean, literally, I was shaking that much. Shake. And I asked if I could please go down earlier than the others, because we all had to wait for each other to get to the top.
Right.
In that time, a storm started to come in. So it was sleeting. The wind was so cold. And I got to the top. And you know when that you're told to lean into your fear? That's exactly what I had to do at this moment, because all I could think was, I'm really cold. I'm shaking so much that the ropes are moving. But if I don't do this, I can't get down, because I can't. How are they going to get me down? Yeah. There's no other option other than to just do it. So I just tried to block everything out. And again, I didn't realize I was talking to myself. And when they showed me the film afterwards, when I saw it on the telly, all I'm saying out loud is, keep going, keep going, keep going. But the thing is, I said it all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, until they were still de-rigging me. And Ollie was laughing, like, you're here. You can stop now. You don't need to keep going. You don't need to keep going. And basically, I got to the bottom and I collapsed with hypothermia. And I got carted off in an ambulance, and then I was never seen again.
No.
That was my end of the road for me. But what's fascinating was the doctor told me it was because of the hysterectomy and the menopause. And because I'd had a full hysterectomy, obviously with ovaries removed and everything, people think of the menopause as the sweats. You get very hot. But it works the other way as well. Basically, you can't regulate your body temperature.
Really? Isn't that fascinating?
It is, and I'd never heard of that before. He was a wonderful doctor. And he explained to me that I recommend you just stop now, because even if they give you a warmer coat, even if they try and help you out in some way, once you get to the point of cold, your body's not like everyone else's, which will balance itself. You'll stay cold and then you'll end up back here again.
Yeah.
So I just went, you know what, I think I'm officially done.
So you flew home and
Yes.
sort of recovered from your physical symptoms.
Yes.
But how
Lots of
were you
cut
left
fingers
then
and things.
emotionally? What happened with the breakdown that you talk so unbelievably lucidly about in your book?
I think a lot of it was to do with, I'm a big believer in the planets aligning. Everything happened so horribly for all the right reasons. My dog died on the day I came down the mountain, and I heard it all over the phone from Chile. Now, anyone who's got a dog will know how much they mean to you. And he was this big, beautiful Labradoodle he'd seen me through my divorce. He'd seen me through when I was first on my own without the kids, when they go off, you know, on every other weekend and this sort of thing. He was my boy.
Yeah.
And it was very sudden, and it was horrific. So I came home, and normally, again, anyone who's got a dog knows the whole thing. If you get to the door,
you get
and
home
the dog's
and
there,
it
and
greets you,
and you know, you're a bit irritated. Let me put my bag down. There was total silence. So I'd had this horrific thing where all these memories came out, and I had tried to just shut them back in again. Then I came home, and my dog had died, and then I went back to work, and I personally think what happened, I was trying to run the website at the same time, which is really challenging. It's a brand new business.
Yes.
I'm also hosting a live TV show.
Yes.
That's very challenging.
Yeah.
You know, we got teenagers in the house. I actually think that everything just all came together at once. And what happened was I could feel it coming. I just thought, I'm not coping. I'm not. It's almost that eye twitchy feeling of I'm not coping with this. But I'm one of life's copers. I cope with whatever is thrown at me.
Cope.
I'm eldest child. I'm very sensible. I'm not the one who lies on the floor screaming, going, I can't do this anymore. You know, even the fact that I do it in that voice. I'm not one of those people. I'm actually jealous of those people, because actually
how did you
stop.
feel? How did you feel at this time? What was happening inside your head?
Overwhelm.
Right.
It was a huge feeling of just being over. It was all too much. And I felt that everything was getting bigger and I was getting smaller. And I couldn't cope with it. Normally you break problems down into bite-sized chunks. You look at the solution, not the problem. I'm a very logical person. I couldn't. I became incredibly negative. I can see that now. I definitely became not just glass half empty. I don't even have a glass. What's the point of a glass? It was like that. But you realize again with hindsight that all you're looking for is all the things that are going wrong. And if you look for them, you will find them.
Yes,
and
for
so
sure you will.
I did. And it came to a horrible head. I was so stressed. I was being sick before going into work on Loose Women. I was getting through rather than enjoying it. I love working in live telly.
Yeah.
I get a real kick out of it. I've always thought of it as like driving a racing car.
Yes.
You know, and you're in charge.
Yeah.
And I've always used the analogy. It's like driving a racing car with a sleeping baby in the back. If you can arrive and you've
Fast,
done
but
all
careful.
these things and you handbrake turn and and the baby goes, oh, we arrived. Then the audience doesn't know any of the problems that you've dealt with because you've kept smiling and kept it smooth. And I could feel that I wasn't handling the car as well as I could. And it was how it came to a head was Donna, who is one of our makeup artists. But
Donna May.
I've
been featuring her makeup ranges and her bags. Love Donna May's things.
And she's one of our product partners on This Girl's on Fire.
Fantastic.
So it's all, we
Great.
hugely champion Donna. But obviously I've known Donna for years, and people think, oh, so your makeup artist took you to one side. No, Donna's my friend.
Yeah.
Donna introduced me to my husband. You
Oh,
know,
really?
Yeah, she's a friend. And she knocked on my dressing room door and she said, look, just quickly before you come in to makeup, stop. Whatever it is that you think you're dealing with really well, you're not. And I've been keeping an eye on you and you're going to crack. And just because one person said, stop, I literally fell on the floor just at that total moment. And I cried for an hour in my room and everything came out. And she pieced me back together again, put some powder and lippy on.
No.
did my hair.
Trundled you off
and
to the studio.
Trundled me off. But I think, 20 odd years of doing live telly, you go into autopilot.
Yeah,
I
you
did
do.
it. I still did a great job. No one at home would have known.
No.
But I got home and just said to Nick, enough. I can't cope anymore.
So who did you reach out to at that point?
Again, I asked another girlfriend who I knew had therapy. Would you recommend your therapist? I'd never had therapy before, but I thought I need help with this. There's a bit I put in the book where I explain that I'm a very sensible, logical, intelligent woman. So if you look up what's wrong with you and you figure out how to fix it. But I realized actually that's like looking at brain surgery and thinking you can do it in your own head. You can't. There are times when you need to go to someone who's a specialist, especially in when your brain is just feeling so overwhelmed. So I found a therapist near where I live, and Nick and I made the decision that it was really important that he came, not for all of the sessions. I went on my own for the first. We went jointly for the first one. Then I went for loads on my own, and then he joined at the end. And the reason being for that, which got hugely blown out of all proportion by the media, who were like,
marriage breakdown.
Yeah, exactly. It was a total opposite. Was because if you're a team and one of you is going through this hugely life-changing thing, the other one is still carrying on as normal. He doesn't, or she doesn't know that there could be little things that they're doing that is not good for you right now.
Oh, no, really helpful
Tiny
to bring
words,
people in.
So he needed to learn how to work with me, and that's literally all it was. Best thing we ever did.
Really?
It was the best thing we ever did.
And how quickly did you begin to feel better?
I would say in the first instance, it took a couple of weeks because you're still operating on it's like when you're driving a car at 100 miles an hour in first gear. It's going it takes a while for all of that to sort of calm down. My doctor was a great help. She gave me some basically they're like beta blockers just to try and calm my body down. But in terms of the therapy, I'd say it probably by the third session I had started to feel better. So it was once a week. And the biggest benefit was saying out loud things I'd never said out loud before, and not dancing around it. Saying skirting around. Well, this thing, I had issues. I had issues, and I'd have to dance around it now because for legal reasons I can't identify people and what have you.
I wouldn't ask you.
But
specifics.
Being able to say out loud things that I had happened to me, and not have someone go, well, and dismiss it. To have someone listen, dig a little bit deeper, and then put a name to what it was. First of all, it was horrifying because your instinct is to go, oh, no, that's not me. And then when we dug deeper, absolutely it is. And I hate using the word victim because I don't see myself as a victim, but I was. And, but people bandy about, no, I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor. I do see that as well now, actually.
Yes, you can be both.
And she helped me recognize that it was wrong. That it wasn't my fault.
No.
And no matter what this other person said, as in, well, I wouldn't do that if you didn't do this. If you didn't make me angry, then I wouldn't. And I think
that's just classic manipulative behavior, coercive behavior.
So to be able to have someone look me in the eye with empathy and support, recognize it and say, you're actually amazing because look how far you've come without any help at all. So let's unpack it. Let's understand where you are now, why you've ended up that it all became too much. And I know why it became too much. It's because the box flew open.
Yes. Do you know, it's so interesting you talk about boxes and unpacking. And I remember interviewing a psychiatrist not that long ago. And his point was basically we all have stuff to a lesser or greater extent. And if you have a trauma, unless you really take it out and examine it and you know, call it by its name and literally vocalize it, you pack it away, and there is this, he called it a box or a trunk in the back of your brain.
Yes.
It's like in a little room in the furthest spot, and it sits in there, and it's all covered up, and the box is locked, and it's all nicely safely tucked away, and nobody's going to get at it, and you don't ever need to think about it because it's all safely squirreled away. But one day, as you experienced, that box is very likely to break open. And he told me this awful story about this guy who'd been very badly abused as a child, and it had been locked away in his box, and when he was 50 he committed suicide. And his twin brother found his diaries and read through them, and it was all about how he had never come to terms and told
so
anybody
sad.
about the trauma. And he'd said, you know, if only, and this psychiatrist was actually seeing the twin brother, because it's like, you know, I don't want the same thing to happen to me, and I need to understand my brother's feelings, and I also have, you know, bad stuff that happened to me as well. You know, how can we get it out there? It's so important, isn't it, to recognise stuff
is.
and not keep your box locked away in the back of your head.
I mean, I come from a family and a generation where you tuck things away.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. You get over it.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Worse things have happened.
Yeah.
What's the matter with you? Pull yourself together. You know, what do you want to talk about that for?
Yes.
It's
it's
done.
all old history,
It's done.
ancient history.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
it's painful too to have to revisit it.
yeah. And you don't want to look at it
No.
anymore. And I didn't expect to. It happened. But again, I see now that actually I was being led to go and do SAS,
Isn't that
to have this
extraordinary?
horrible experience happen to me for the greater good. And I'm so glad it happened. I mean, it was terrible, but I'm glad. Not the SAS, that was fine. The aftermath.
The whole experience, but you came through it and stronger, and are now sharing it. And is that really the whole premise of This Girl Is on Fire, and the website and the book is about empowering, passing on those kind of skills?
Yeah, 100%. And it's how the book actually came about was really funny, because I have to again tiptoe around this to not incriminate anybody. But there was a person who they were moaning. They were moaning and moaning and moaning about how terrible their life was. And I remember I had to leave the room because I thought, you have nothing to moan about. The thing you're moaning about is so little. And it's the same thing you moaned about last year and the year before. And you've done nothing about it.
Yes, this is sounding surprisingly familiar without wanting to overshare.
Unless you're going to do something about it, shut up. In a nutshell.
Yeah.
And the first line of the book, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, but the very first line of the book is what I wrote. I literally went upstairs, and I carry a notebook everywhere that I go. I opened my notebook, I sat on the floor, and I just wrote, shit happens.
Yes, I read that line.
Get over it.
Yes.
You need to get over it.
But it's a bit like the first line in The Road Less Travelled. You know, is it Scott F. Peck or F. Scott Peck, who said his first line is, life is difficult. You know, life is difficult, and, you know, you're right. You know, shit happens, and we do have to deal with it.
And we all have our different things, and some are great. There are people who've had way worse things happen than me. I don't have ownership on difficult things. Of course not. All of us have our difficult things. But if you do nothing, nothing changes. So you need to find a way to overcome it. And as I say in the very, very start of the book, if you're happy rolling around in it, brilliant. Okay, that's totally fine. But own it. And don't pretend that you want something to change and that you're asking for advice. You're not. Actually, all you're doing is just saying lots of stuff out loud, and you're going to go back home and not make any changes to your life. So own the fact that you're rolling around in all your misery and you're quite happy there.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Or
own it
change.
and do something. And they can be tiny, tiny, tiny.
What are the little
steps.
strategies that you talk about? What would be your first sort of points of advice?
Well, again, I think because we all have our different things, and people think, well, either this problem is too big for me to handle on my own, or it's too small, so therefore there's nothing I can do about it. I was talking about this with my 13-year-old just this week. We went for this really long walk, and she's got her own things that she's dealing with. And I said, this was a story that I retell in the book, but I'd heard it at it was a Tony Robbins event that I went to. And it's a story about the pole. And basically this man came on the stage. He told the story about he's driving with his mother, and long straight road. His mother's driving, and an animal runs out in the road, and she has to swerve. And she swerves off to the side. There's no other cars on the road, and she's heading straight for a telegraph pole. And he's shouting, "Watch the pole! Watch the pole! What are you doing?" And she's just fixated, and she's driving straight towards the pole. And there's this huge expanse of space either side, but she is going straight for this pole. For the pole. And so he wrenches the wheel. They go to the side, go into a field. They're fine, a little bit shaken up.
Yeah.
And he says, "Why were you heading for the pole?" And she said, "It was all I could hear. Watch the pole, and it was all I could see."
Right.
That's what we do with our problems.
Yes.
Is you
look at the space either side.
We look at the problem. We don't look at the huge space either side that is the solution. So I was saying this to my daughter the other day. You know, you might think a 13-year-old's problems, what has she got to worry about compared to someone else?
They're life-changing.
Relative. Focus on the solution, not the problem. And then what you'll find is your body will react positively because you're doing something about it.
Yeah.
So what can you do about it? Tiny, tiny things. Big believer in lists. Write lots of pros and cons.
Yes.
And work towards the pros. That simple.
Yeah.
What do I not like about this? What would I like to change? What could I do to make that change? Do those things. Mm-hmm. It's that simple.
And you talk about the brain being a gossip.
Oh, yes. Your brain is such a mean girl and such a gossip. It will whisper in your head while you're shampooing your hair. It's always at that moment where you're like, you know, she doesn't really like you. You know that
and
the
you're
day
actually
when
a bit
you
rubbish.
went in, and I don't know, why do you think you can do this? You're terrible at that. You're going to turn up at this thing and everyone's going to hate you.
Yeah.
And by the time you get out of the shower, you're miserable. I'm thinking, well, actually, they're right. Maybe I should just cancel the whole thing. And I
you're
think
so right. Our brain
you.
is a mean girl. Very often. Very few times, I think, maybe unless you're an amazing narcissist, does your brain actually say, "Oh my goodness, you're so wonderful.
Aren't you fabulous?
Didn't you do well?"
Never.
No, it's so critical.
So again, one of the things that I've learned is, you know, what would you say to someone who was talking like that? For me, I would excuse myself and just walk out the room, probably get my notebook out and write stuff down.
To go now.
I just need to go now. Or because it's your own self, you just say, "Do you know, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I don't want to talk about that anymore." And your brain, like a recalcitrant toddler, will go off and find someone else to poke.
Hopefully not you. Do you give yourself positive affirmations? Do you find that helpful? I mean, I've heard that saying things out loud, talking to yourself as if you're your best friend. So saying, "Actually, Liz, you know, you didn't do that bad a job. It was okay. And, you know, cut yourself some slack because I know you're trying really hard." Yeah. And if you say those things out loud, apparently our brain hears it in a totally different way than if you just think it.
That's, I don't know if I do it out loud, but I do.
It seems really odd and you just feel like a total
I should do. I've
weirdo.
Started driving everywhere on my own now, obviously, because of current situation. So, I do. I tend to moan a lot more in the car. I kind of vent. Then by the time I get home, I've sort of got it all out my system. But what I do say to myself is, what you did, the little bit you said there, which is cut yourself some slack. I did the best I could with what I was given. And today, I did the best I could with what I was given in terms of my energy levels, my concentration levels, the, you know, how prepared I felt. I did the best I could. Yeah. And okay, maybe tomorrow I could have knocked it out the park and done much better, but yesterday I could have been terrible. And today I did the very best that I could. And that's all I can ever ask of myself. And I find that, because I'm a perfectionist as well, and I'm a classic breakdown person, as in hold everything in, try and get everything right, people please everybody else. And if I don't, like, for example, when I'm working on live TV, I get such a kick out of hitting all my counts bang on. I don't know what it is, but I literally kind of go high five to me when I come out bang on zero or when I do whatever. Yeah. And if there's moments where something's overrun and autocue's spinning and I'm having to just paraphrase and get to the end and I still get out on zero, I beat myself up because I think, oh, you didn't leave enough time for that end link, you know, and I'll go home beating myself up. Whereas at home, no one will have noticed anything.
No.
I didn't crash the fast car with the baby asleep. It was all fine. And I've learned now to go, do you know, you did the best you could with what you were given. Yeah. It was a tricky guest who wouldn't be quiet, or it was a conversation that, or whatever. Or I
had
couldn't
to go somewhere else.
Here, it was open talk back. There's a lot going on. I did the best I could.
Yeah.
That's really helped.
What about things, the physicality of it? You talk about power posing. That's really fascinating, isn't it? How we sit and stand. Yes. Do you channel any of that, you know, either at work or at home?
Yes. And obviously Amy Cuddy did that infamous TED Talk, and then she wrote her book about power posing and how we've all been. It's been drummed into us that you know fake it till you make it. Actually, you can fake it till you become it,
Right?
Which is a very different thing. And I first heard about this. I was around at a friend's house, and she was talking to another girlfriend. She said, "Oh, I had a job interview today, and I stood in the ladies' loos, and I stood like that." And I was
So you've
thinking,
got your like your arms up.
yeah, like an
for
big
those
X.
For those who can't see.
Yeah,
Okay, like an X.
like a big
Literally
X,
like a big X.
a big X, taking up as much space as possible.
Like a guy would do, maybe.
Well, do you know, men do the equivalent where they stand with their hands on their hips.
So they become bigger. They become wider.
And they take up more space.
Interesting.
And they stand up straighter. If you notice, a lot of men stand with their hands on their hips and they jangle their change in their pocket and they kind of rock from side to side and do all that. They're posturing. They're taking up a lot of space. They don't even know that they're doing it. Whereas women, we tend to sit very neatly, cross-legged.
Yeah, we're making ourselves
and
much
we
smaller.
make ourselves very small, very neat. We don't take up a lot of space. So I mean, I think each to their own. I'm not going to stand like a big X in front of everybody or with my hands on my hips. But what I do is I stand up straighter and I hold my tummy in. And it's got nothing to, it's not a vanity thing. It's not so that it's so that I feel stronger.
I'm sitting up straighter as we speak.
Well, I'm literally sitting here with flip-flops on. And, you know, I kind of power pose today from the waist up.
Actually, heels do that, don't they? A pair of heels for a woman can totally transform how you feel. You do feel that you're making that power statement because you have to, you know, to keep your balance, you have to have your back straight and your shoulders back.
Yes. And I also think as well, how you dress.
Yeah.
And how you dress is not necessarily a vanity thing. It's a confidence thing. It's taken me a long time to get my head around that. Like today, if you can't see this, I've got a nice dress on. I've done my makeup. I've got my clip-in hair.
Have you? Is that not all yours?
No, I've got this little strip of, you can get them anywhere, of clip-in hair. And all it does is it's the same length as my own hair. And it just makes it a little bit thicker.
That is fantastic.
Isn't it great?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to be having a massively close inspection
I'll
when we
whip
finish.
It out at
Will
the
you?
end. I'll take
brilliant.
it out and I'll show you. But otherwise I won't get back in again. But I'm really open about the fact that I do this because to me it's the equivalent of putting on a pair of high heels. Yeah. I have quite fine babyish hair and it's totally okay. But I like it to look bigger. Yeah. So I do this, I put some makeup on, I wear a nice dress and I feel like I'm present and I'm turning up for you with respect. As my best self. If I turned up and I was in my pajamas this morning, I meditated in the garden in my pajamas. I could have just turned up like that. But that
it would have been
very disrespectful. But also, I wouldn't feel that I was in control of myself. I'm not giving. So, think about how you're dressing, not for what you necessarily even want other people to think of you, but just how you feel about yourself.
How it makes you feel. I think that's really interesting. And actually talking about those kind of power poses, I did also read that how you stand can affect your hormone levels. So if you stand like Wonder Woman with your hands on your hips and you stand up and you do it for 10 minutes, that raises our testosterone.
I can see why that would be. Yeah.
So you can kind of channel that. And actually thinking about testosterone, last time we were here, you were talking about HRT and obviously with your hysterectomy and your hormone journey. How is that all going?
Good, actually.
Now?
Yeah, I've totally found my balance.
Have you?
I've found...
Do you add in the testosterone? Because I find
that,
I find a little bit now and then is helpful.
I get spots if I have too many, too much. Yeah. It's a little pump. Yes. And I literally just do just a little bit every couple of weeks. It's not even every week or every day or anything like that. And I find that I have to get the balance right of your jawline is where your hormonal spots come. I get spots there. Yeah. But no, I feel great. I feel really good.
It's always such a balance, isn't it? And I think that's what makes it so difficult for a lot of women is that they are prescribed maybe just a simple patch or something by the GP, if they're lucky enough to get that, as we know. And it may not be the right amount or it may be too little or too much.
Which is why it's good to have all the different things separately.
Yes, I think so too.
So you can raise a bit here, think of it as like a volume. If you have an amazing like a mixer desk, a mixer desk, you can mix it to get the perfect sound or just crank it up and it doesn't always sound good. So mix and match it a little bit.
But I'm certainly going to be taking mine forever and I know that And I know, remember when we talked last time, I think you were saying that you had men who would come up to you in the street and thank you for talking about menopause and the
Yes.
work that you were doing, because it
I
had,
still do.
really
Yeah.
transformed their wives or their partners' lives.
Absolutely.
And therefore helped
Yeah.
them, and everybody was just happier.
And I it happened again recently where for whatever reason, I ended up being asked about the menopause, and this tsunami of response through
Yes,
social
absolutely.
media is obviously the easiest way for people to get in touch. And you still can't believe that people are getting mixed messages and mixed information.
Yeah.
And so, I direct them to lovely
Louise Newson.
And there's so many people, and Tina Pierce, who I work
Yes.
with, she's the one who helped me. There is advice out there that is sensible and straightforward. It doesn't have to be complicated. And John Studd was the one who, because Tina worked with him, and I saw John Studd years ago. We just need to keep banging the drum.
Oh my goodness. And I think we will, because once you find it and you find things that work and you see the injustice, and you're like me, is that having had that journalistic background, when you see things that aren't right, particularly for midlife women, I think that's our bag, isn't it? We've all in our different ways been through different experiences, different life experiences, hopefully popped out the other side stronger and wiser, and just want to share.
And that was obviously the Confessions of a Menopausal Woman was literally came about through wanting to help. So I thought, well, people clearly need information, so I'm going to get it and give it to them. And then my latest one, This Girl's on Fire, was I've been through this horrible experience and I didn't get out of it on my own. Actually, I met some incredible people. Here's all their advice.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's just paying it forward. And already I'm trying to think, what else can I help with?
Yes.
And actually, I'm really loving this whole change of mindset, which isn't just let's wallow in a problem and roll around in it, as we say. And I'm going to write a book about how terrible everything is. It's the opposite of that.
Yes.
This is what I did. I'm not an expert by any stretch. This is just my experience. This was the advice that worked for me. These are the people that gave it to me. Have a crack at it yourself, and hopefully it helps.
Brilliant. Honestly, it's such a joy to have you back here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like being done with the place.
Oh, well, I think your book is just going to fly, because it's going to talk to so many and be so helpful.
Thank you. And you don't need to fall out of a helicopter to read this book.
Well, I'm mightily pleased to hear that, because there is no way, as somebody with acute vertigo, that you would get me anywhere near anything like that.
You're not going to sign up?
Hats off to you. Not in this life, no. You can take that as an absolute.
Okay, yeah. I'm not recruiting. It's fine.
It's lovely to have you.
Thank you.
And that is it for today's episode. Now, as always, you will find all the links and the resources that we mentioned on today's show over on the website, which is lizearlewellbeing.com. And there you can sign up for the free weekly newsletter. It is, as always, jam-packed with wellbeing wisdom and behind-the-scenes treats. And huge thanks to all of you who have left us such lovely reviews and star ratings. It really does help others to find the show, and we are so grateful. So until the next time, go well. Bye-bye. The Liz Earle Wellbeing Show is presented by me, Liz Earle, with production by Amaryllis Earle and Harry Trevithick at Heart Dialogue, with thanks to my producer Ellie Smith and guest booker Millie de la Morinière.